and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Westborough. If you haven't seen this show before, my name is Art Bergeron. My day job is as an elder law attorney at Myrick O'Connell, right here in Westborough, but this is not about my day job. If you've seen any of my presentations, you know that I always talk about my friends Frank and Mary, whose goal in life is to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. So this show is about Frank and Mary here in Westborough, and if you identify with this, and that's what you want to do, you want to stay right here, you don't want to move far away, then the point of this show is to help you know the people you need to know and the programs you need to know about in order to do exactly that. Now, I don't know all those people. Shelby Marshall does, which is why somehow I suckered her into being my co-host a number of years ago. We've been doing this for like a long time now, from like pre-COVID. It's like back in the mists of time.
Right.
This is actually only our second show back in like a real studio.
Right.
We're actually getting to have a guest whom I had never seen before except on Zoom. I thought maybe she was just made up,
Like
but
an
no.
avatar.
Yeah, she's
Right,
like
right.
a real person. So Shelby, whom do we have today?
Hi, so good morning, Arthur. Great to see you again. Great to be in the studio. And today we have Director of Youth and Family Services, Cara Presley, with us. So, Cara, welcome. Welcome
you.
again. Welcome back. You've been on a
Yes.
couple times, but Cara was a pretty regular guest during the dreaded times of COVID.
Yeah,
and,
trying to lift us up during those different,
Right.
and help people figure it out how to make it.
Right.
Through
And
some really hard times.
So, being that there are still hard times and mental health is still something that we need to focus on, and I don't know if it ever goes away, but hopefully my mental health never goes away.
It only goes away
Right,
when
that was
we
kind of
do.
a stupid statement,
so,
right?
So it's like, be careful what you wish for.
Right. I want to
I
always
have
have
no
mental
more
health.
problems. Ooh,
Exactly, that's a different show. Anyway, okay, sorry folks, way off course. Anyway, Cara, welcome.
Thank you.
So Cara's here because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and what better resource to have with us but Cara. So Cara, take it away. Tell us what you want to tell us.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I'll start with what you said of will the mental health needs or issues ever go away? They might not, but part of why I'm here today is because with Mental Health Awareness Month, my goal is to destigmatize the conversation about mental health. And that, even though it may not make the mental health problems disappear, it will make it easier, hopefully, for people to talk about it, for people to ask for help. I want to make sure people know how to get help, where to go for help. And so that is the reason I'm here today. And just under the umbrella of May being Mental Health Awareness Month, it just makes it all the better reason for me to come today.
that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
So I think particularly because for our friends Frank and Mary, I think even from a demographic, sometimes that reaching out, the asking for help is a real challenge. So what are some of the resources that are available to, that you think would be appropriate for them, or if they know someone who is one of their friends is struggling with a situation, whether it's their own or a family member, how can we help them?
I'm going to talk a lot this morning about resources because there are a number of them, both that can be accessed in person and on the phone and in other ways, so that really anyone in any situation can access some level of assistance. So I would say that indeed being isolated is one of the biggest factors that can exacerbate mental health problems. If people are having a tendency towards depression or anxiety, being disconnected from other people is one of the things that can make that even worse. So even before something becomes a mental health problem, if someone is noticing that they're feeling a little bit lonely, or their neighbor seems to be particularly isolated, or a friend seems to be kind of keeping to themselves more than usual, I would say the number one thing to do is to reach out, to have person-to-person connection. I mean, how wonderful is it that I get to sit here with you today instead of just seeing you on a screen? It's a totally different feeling, and it really makes a difference just to make that connection. So I'd say check in on each other, number one. Ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask, how are you feeling? You seem more down than usual, or you seem more worried than usual. Don't be shy about saying the words. We want to make it normal. I mean, it is normal for us to be down, to be worried, and not all the time, but if it starts to get in the way of us doing what we need to do every day, then we want to start talking about it even more and reaching out for help. So ask your friend the questions.
That's a great way to be thinking about it. It's like we all have bad days, But it's kind of what's the definition of a disability? You know, it's like if it's getting in the way,
Yeah.
right? If it isn't just that your arm hurts, but that your arm hurts and so you can't do something, well then maybe you need to, you know, check. If it's getting in the way.
That's exactly the way to think about it. And I will name some of the key signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety, which are the most common mental health issues that we face on a day-to-day basis. A very large proportion of the population experiences depression and or anxiety at some point in their lives. And
I mean,
so,
it isn't just me on Monday morning.
right? It's not.
There are other people on Monday morning that are really they're experiencing the same. Oh Jesus! You know, right?
Now, if that happens on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then for a whole another week,
Right.
and it's not really lifting, that's a sign that something might be a little more amiss than the usual Sunday evening blahs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Or-
what are those? What are those signs? And if you can kind of,
Yeah.
if there is a differentiation between depression and anxiety, you know, if you can kind of tell us that.
Well, I'm going to talk about depression because I think that's the one that maybe is going to feel most familiar to a lot of people, and those signs and symptoms are pretty evident. And that is if you're finding that your sleep is disturbed for more than 2 weeks. So if you're sleeping way more than usual, or you're having a tremendous trouble sleeping, then
Oh, either way.
either way, then that might be something, but not alone. Other indicators are if you usually enjoy doing an activity and suddenly it's just not fun anymore. You like to hang out with your neighbors, but you're not calling them. You like to work in the garden, but you're not going outside. All those kinds of things. And that is lasting for 2 weeks or more. That may be a sign. If you're feeling particularly fatigued or particularly agitated and your body is feeling really heavy and slow or really worked up and wound up, that's another indicator. If you're having thoughts of feeling worthless or really down on yourself, again, more than usual, and it's lasting for a couple of weeks. If you're having thoughts of hurting or killing yourself, that also would be an indicator of depression. So those are some key things to look for.
But it's an interesting way to think about it, though, that the issue is it for a prolonged period?
That's
because
it.
we go through, I think we all find ourselves, you know, you go through these phases, and then you kind of catch yourself, and you go, why am I so down right
Got
now,
it.
right? But then it kind of like clears up.
Right.
Oftentimes, because you see people.
Yes.
Well, I shouldn't say that.
Sometimes,
For
yes.
me, it varies, right? We
Yeah,
all
I mean, you might
it
see
varies with
people,
everybody.
You might, you know, maybe you have a particular faith and you practice that faith and you have a moment where there's, you know, kind of clarity, or you read something, or you turn off the news and
You know, you turn off
Yeah.
the
right,
news.
right, and
Yeah.
and
That's right.
there is kind of a lifting
Yes.
of that situation.
But I could see why, for that reason, you know, when we had you on for the last couple of years, you know, you had people who they were out of their routines, and therefore the typical things that would lift them up when they were feeling down weren't there,
You
because
got it.
people, among other things, people weren't there, and just the places to go weren't there, and so it really kind of it I'm sure changed a lot of the flow of their lives. And they kind of wouldn't necessarily have picked it up. They would just be
Right.
saying, wow, geez, I'm just really
Exactly.
feeling down.
Exactly.
So, Cara, I mean, this is not an uncommon situation. You know, adult children looking in on their parents, having maybe long distance conversations. Let's say those parents live here in Westborough, but they're watching this show. How can they help them from afar? Are there resources that those adult children could tap into, kind of here, that are local, or encourage? You know, how do you move that from a mom sounds really down, you know, or dad is caregiving for mom and he's getting more and more isolated because, you know, her condition is worsening. You know, what could that adult child do to, you know, kind of help their parents?
So there are a few options. I think one, again, don't be shy about asking the questions and saying that there's a concern. Help your parents see or recognize that there's a change. There's a change from what the norm has been, and that it's okay to talk about it. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you or that you've done anything wrong, but that there's something we see that's amiss. And then there are a number of options, depending on the parent's mobility, willingness to leave the house, willingness to talk to someone that they don't know. But in Westborough, we have a number of resources. If the parent is able and willing to consider going elsewhere or reaching out to someone else to get help, Youth and Family Services, Westborough Youth and Family Services, does offer both in-person and telehealth video conference counseling to those who qualify. And for those who aren't the right fit for our services, we will connect people to services elsewhere. The senior center has an outreach worker who will check on families and individuals and provide a resource and either connect them to services as needed or just be a friendly resource that might be the thing that the parents need to be lifted.
A checkpoint, right? Yep.
And then there are several hotlines that are available that people can call either to get connected to services or just to have someone to talk to. And I will be sharing with all of you a resource list. We'll make sure it's accessible on this show and that people can call our office and get hard copies of it. But it has,
we could have a
it has
banner.
all the
They'll take-
resources, both in person, emergency, hotlines that you can call 24/7. It gives a lot of different options for how people can reach out for help. And relatives from out of state can help spur that process along.
Sure. And so, we have certainly viewers who have grandkids who may be struggling with mental health. Sadly, there have been a number of headline stories of young people taking their lives. And so if you're Frank or Mary, how do you make that connection back to your child and their, maybe teen who's struggling, and what sort of resources are available sort of for the younger set?
I'm glad you bring that up. If you haven't heard, the U.S. Surgeon General declared at the end of 2021 that we are in a state of crisis for youth mental health right now. So in the last 2 years, the needs of youth around mental health have really skyrocketed. So this is a real issue, and many families are impacted. And I suggest when there's a concern about kids, start with the school and start with the pediatrician. Go to those two trusted resources first to say, hey, I'm noticing something in my child or my grandchild and I'm concerned. Can you help me figure out what's happening and what we need to do? Start there. You're also welcome to call our office. Youth and Family Services offers free consultations to any Westborough resident to talk about any family concern, mental health concern, just kind of question about relationships or resources. We'll just have you come in, talk with us for an hour, and we'll make a plan to support you to get your needs met and your family's needs met.
Yeah, because what we don't want to do is have people kind of feeling isolated, feeling like they're alone, that they're the only one, that there's something wrong, because, removing that stigma is so important, right? You have, to your point, you have an arm, your shoulder's bothering you, you go to an orthopedist and no one says, oh my God, your shoulder's bothering you, what's wrong with you, right? Until we really start to take a look at and kind of unwrap mental health, these are conversations that are really important.
But was it when you were young, right, which is a long time ago, was there still a lot of stigma around mental health? Because I know there was when I was young.
Sure.
I remember my older brother who had spent a number of years in a monastery, in the Trappist monastery in Spencer, and then came home, and it was a mess. And it was suggested, you should really talk to counseling, talk to a psychiatrist. And I remember my father talked to a psychiatrist just because the words, mental health, a mental problem was just, it was like, oh my God, it was just like opening up a black box.
Right.
And it just seems like for a lot of younger people like Shelby,
Cara's younger.
That a lot of that, I don't want to say a lot of that has totally gone away, but it's much more part of the conversation now. It's not like you're weird, because you're going through some of these things.
Well, Cara can speak to that. I mean, she's the professional in the room. I mean, I think that a lot of that has lifted. But I still think that there's the so-and-so had to see someone. I mean, you would never say that. I mean, I'm having my knee operated on Monday. No one's
you had to see your doctor?
You had to go, have someone, an orthopedist look at, your knee. Whoa, there must be something wrong with you.
Yeah, that's right.
As opposed to the person's getting help. And we know those conversations happen. And why do we do that? I just, I think it's still there. I think we're talking about it more, and that's more important. And so I don't want to use the word normalizing it. I don't know if that's the right word, but. I don't know.
That's the
Yeah.
goal, is to normalize it. It
Yeah.
really is, to make it like talking about a bum knee. It
Yeah.
really, we want it to be that way.
Right.
I happen to be the children of mental health professionals. My parents are in their 70s, retired, but I had a unique advantage in my generation of growing up with parents who are uniquely in that profession. So
Right.
it's never been stigmatized in my family, but outside my family, the minute you mention it, if anyone in my family got help, or if I was talking, encouraging other people to get help, it was something you did in secret. You whispered about it behind the scenes. And I am just desperately trying to make it a normal conversation that we don't whisper about. And luckily, it's becoming more commonplace in medical environments to talk about mental health. So again, if that's where you start, hopefully you will be welcome, you will not be judged, and you will get the help that you need.
Yeah, I will say, and that's a great point and segue for. I really have been impressed. Most recently, my daughter, in her annual checkup with her pediatrician, there was a whole series of questions. Now she's still at the age of being 11, where I'm still in the room, but I know that those conversations continue and sort of change in their framework after.
And
like
she didn't
12,
tell you to
13.
leave?
No, she didn't, but I offered. Like
Oh,
I offered,
oh.
do you want me to leave?
Yeah.
And said no, it's fine. But I know that the pediatrician actually said at some point we will ask you and all that. I'm like, that's great.
Right.
But I also know for myself, when I had my annual, there were a number of questions. So that my doctor asked that clearly were striking at the, what is your kind of mental wellness, or how are you feeling? So I hope that is becoming a more consistent practice across. Kind of in the traditional medical field. And if it's not, what I would encourage Frank and Mary to do is to open up and have those conversations with your, with your primary care. Because if you don't do it with that person, who are you going to do it with?
Who are you going to do it with?
Right?
Because you're not going to do it with your kids. Forget it. You're
I
just
think
not
it's
going to talk to your
unique
kids
if
about
you're
it.
going to do it with your kids.
Because it's like they'll never understand. They'll never understand, right? It's just.
Or I don't want to burden them with that.
I don't want to for any number of reasons.
But-
And taking advice from your kids. I mean, I deal with this a lot, and they just can't deal with it. They just can't do it.
that
It's
face
really
I've seen
hard.
on my parents. That's
I
interesting.
was
That's-
going to say mine too.
Yeah,
My mental
same.
health professional parents still, when it comes to me making recommendations
They're
for
like,
them,
"What?
it's hard.
You?"
It's hard. So let me
Like-
suggest
Yeah,
another option.
please.
I'll also make this available to folks, but this is just an advertisement for our online mental health screening. I don't know how much access Frank and Mary and friends have to the internet, but even if their adult children have that access, this is a free anonymous screening tool that will help people recognize if there are signs and symptoms of depression, anxiety, substance misuse, and other mental health disorders. And it won't diagnose people. They still want to follow up with a medical provider or a mental health professional, but it gives people a sign if they're between appointments, if they're not scheduled to see the provider, if they're questioning, is this really something I should pay attention to? There are 8 or 10 different very short screening tools accessible at this website that people can take, and it's for adults and it's for parents of adolescents to fill out on behalf of their kids. I really encourage people to check that out, just if they have any questions, answering on behalf of themselves or someone else.
That's a great idea because it's totally private too.
well, I was
Totally
just gonna
private,
say-
anonymous, and free.
Okay, so just to kind of drill into that a little bit, because there is a stigma, because there is that feeling, maybe of like, and Big Brother's watching, Alexa's listening to me, right? Where does the information go?
The information goes into a database. It is separated from any identifying information. So it would be separated from your email address or your name or anything that you put in there. The screening does ask for demographic information, but again, that's just to keep track of who's taking the screening tools and who we're serving and who we're missing.
Sure.
But it is separated from any identifying information, and it is just given, it is compiled and given to us as the administrators of the site.
Okay.
Just so that you know the numbers, like
That's
Yeah,
it.
in
Just
general,
and that
so we know
makes
the numbers.
sense.
We know that
right.
3 people took a screening last week, and 2 of them scored high for depression.
Sure. Okay.
So you just have some data because you're
It's,
also
it's
looking
data.
for data.
That's
Yeah.
right. And then
Well, 'cause
when
that-
people take the screening, they get their results right
Yeah.
in front of them, and then they give resources very similar to the resource list that I'll
Okay.
make accessible to you.
Sure. And that also obviously informs programming and work for your
Exactly.
department, right?
I guess which leads to the other question. So from your perspective, you're obviously talking with people just like you in a whole bunch of other communities, right, who are doing a whole bunch of other things, right? From that perspective, what's missing? What, or put another way, what if you had additional resources to do it, would you do in order to deal with a lot of these issues? Because obviously this is, I think about it as being resource sensitive.
Yeah.
You got
Because
it.
it's a lot of
Intensive,
because it's a
right,
lot of
right.
people.
Yep.
It's a lot. You're not going to automate you.
Right.
You got it.
right.
That's
Let me
true.
put, it would be a very different conversation. Right.
If we had
I were
all the
calling-
resources,
and-
there are three things that I would target.
Yeah.
One is to make sure everybody's basic needs are met, right? Housing, food, clothes, health, access to health care. That those basic needs are met, because when those needs are unmet, mental health issues
Goes crazy.
skyrocket.
Oh, yeah.
So whatever we could do to bolster people's access to meeting their basic needs. Number two, I would focus on prevention, prevention, prevention. Let's put lots of money into programs that keep people housed, keep people in jobs, give people access to all of those resources, and that give them information and education about mental health and about wellness and about healthy relationships. All of those things help prevent the development of mental health problems. And then finally, and not the least important, is to make sure we have more mental health service providers. So more case managers, more therapists like me. Wait lists right now for outpatient therapy and for inpatient hospitalizations are astronomically high. So people even
compared, and is this like
compared to 2 years ago.
pre-pandemic?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, astronomically
And have not
high.
gone, and have not
Nope.
been starting to
It
go down.
seems
Kids-
to kind of be climbing up instead of down. It's not stabilizing.
Kids waiting
Wow.
in the ER for a spot to be admitted.
Wow.
It's serious stuff.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
not good.
So on the one
And-
hand,
and-
so these are resources you actually can access. The hotlines are accessible to you. What is the other resource line? Maybe it's here.
Interface.
Thank you.
So Westborough has a subscription. As a town, we subscribe to a service called Interface Referral Service, and it's a helpline that will allow Westborough residents to call and get connected to outpatient service providers, outpatient mental health providers who take their insurance and who meet the criteria that they require. That doesn't change the wait lists that are out there. Some people's insurance is makes it easier to access services than others. That's why we exist, to provide counseling to those people who would otherwise fall through the cracks. So if people have any doubts, they not only can call Interface, they can call us to see, like, who do I call, where do I
Right.
start,
Right.
and we can help them with that.
Because I suppose that's got to be one of the issues, right? You just get lost in this.
Right.
It's
It isn't-
overwhelming.
It isn't this, well, it's like a lot of the benefits that are available to seniors. They're all sprinkled around, you know, and everybody's got a different little plan. And so that's a constant.
We
That's
also
a
learned
constant.
about another resource that has been around for a bit, but we've just learned about it, and it's called the Metro West Care Connection and Care Navigation Line. Very similar to Interface. It's a number that you can call to get connected to resources, and there's a website that you can go on and find not only mental health resources, but medical care and basic needs, resources to meet basic needs as well.
Great.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. So do you ever go to someone's home?
Very
Because
rarely.
I would think it would be really hard. I mean,
Yeah, not as a standard, mostly because we do not have the capacity or
right.
infrastructure to be able to do that. If we were to expand and have more time and more staff, we may be able to do that.
Yeah.
But we do try to be creative in how we meet people's needs. We will meet them virtually. We will do drop-offs. We'll drop off paperwork, because in order to help advocate for someone's care, we have to have them sign releases, because
Right.
we do not share people's information about what they share with us without their explicit written
Right.
permission. But we try to be flexible in meeting people's needs, and we'll work with the senior center or with other departments to try to address the needs that maybe aren't in our wheelhouse.
Kara, I was going to ask if whether or not, like this the screening is something that where, our police and our fire departments have copies of this. I mean, obviously they've got to deal with the acute urgent need, but even as a follow on? Are they sharing that information? Or could they? I
Yes,
guess is,
yes, and yes. I think that is something that during this month of mental health awareness, I'm kind of making it a goal to get the word out extra
Yeah,
to everybody,
yeah.
and to make sure that they have all of the kind of outreach materials that they need to
Yeah.
give to people. They are aware, they do know, and we can always do that even more.
Yeah, yeah, okay, great. Yeah, no, that would be great. I mean, I don't expect the fire department to run around with flyers, but, I know that, we have mental health professionals that work with our police and work on jail diversion and lots of, so
Right.
they definitely are also coming into contact with folks every day that could use this.
Right, and they're bumping into folks,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
they just want to make sure that
yeah,
they're like
yeah,
connected.
yeah,
Well,
we're
this
one
is just a
team. This is great.
gigantic amount of information.
I hope it's
Right.
helpful. Good.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Cara.
But it must be challenging that these numbers, which as you say had gone up, don't appear to be going down.
They don't. Right.
There's just nothing cheery about that.
There isn't. I think the thing that I feel hopeful about is that there are a lot of people in a lot of sectors advocating for increased resources. We are pretty lucky to live in a state like Massachusetts who prioritizes access to mental health care. So our outlook here isn't as bleak as in other places, and I'm
Right.
grateful for that. There are a lot of elected officials who are working hard to promote legislation to
do this.
improve access. So I think that there are some good things on the horizon. There's a lot of leadership in support of making this better. So I'm very hopeful for that.
Well, you're even better live than you were on Zoom.
How about that?
You're just
Thanks.
terrific. So this has just been really, really great, right? So as folks know, the last few, I want to say seconds or minutes of our show, I always ask Shelby to let you know kind of what's going on, like what's new at the town. So Shelby?
Yeah, 2 quick updates, Arthur. So want to let folks know lots of questions about what's happening with the old Regal Cinema Theater. So that RFP, so it's 231 Turnpike. If you were to be on our the town's website and want to know when did the selectmen last talk about that, that's what you'd kind of look up. We will soon be releasing that RFP, and so we're looking for obviously interested bidders and to develop that property. So just wanted to give folks an update that will soon be released. Like
Because
this,
you own Regal Cinema?
we do now through a
The
tax
empire,
title taking.
the empire
I
continues.
know.
This
So,
is great.
so we'll see.
that's
We'll see
great.
what happens and
Yeah.
what comes through as a result of
Yeah.
that process.
And
And
what
then Memorial Day. I just wanted, while we will have another show before then, wanted to let folks know that our Memorial Day celebration will be in person this year. And for more information in the schedule of events, you can go to the website.
So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
you,
This has
Karen.
just been really, really helpful, I think, for a lot of folks, and for the Franks and Marys. We all got to get over it. We grew up with this, that you would never talk about this, but it's time. You're old enough now. It's time to get over it. So if there's an issue, help your neighbor out. Stay in touch with folks. Right. This is a big deal. Right. Or if you yourself, a good measure. If you've been really bummed out for like 2 weeks, time to look at doing something about it. All right. So thank you so much, Cara. Thank you very much,
You bet.
Shelby. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Westborough. Thank you very much.